I'll be explaining this with the help of images. Watch till the end to get the complete picture. So the moment we eat food, food enters our digestive system, and from esophagus it enters our stomach. And digestion will happen here. After that it will move to small intestine, and from small intestine all the nutrients will get absorbed into the bloodstream. And so glucose will be absorbed into the bloodstream. And at the same time pancreas will also release insulin. And the amount of insulin that is released by pancreas is directly proportional to the amount of glucose that is present in the bloodstream. So let's see what is the role of insulin in uptaking of glucose. So insulin has these three major roles. So first it will take the glucose to the cells for the generation of energy. Next it will store the glucose on liver and muscles as glycogen for later use, and any excess glucose will be stored as fat. So let's see how the cells will look like. So in each cell, this is how the basic structure will look like. So it has insulin receptor and glucose channel, and by default the glucose channel will be closed. So the moment the insulin from the bloodstream is paired up with the insulin receptors, then the glucose channel will be opened, and then only the glucose from the bloodstream can enter into the cell. So let's see how the energy generation mechanism will be. So when the insulin from the bloodstream is paired up with the insulin receptors, then the glucose channel will be opened, and then the glucose from the bloodstream can enter into the cell. And once the glucose has entered the cell in the presence of oxygen, the cell will convert the glucose plus oxygen into carbon dioxide and water, and energy will be created. And this is how the energy will be created at the cell level from the glucose. And a human body has around 37 trillions of the cells, and in each cell this mechanism will happen to generate the energy, and that is how we get energy from glucose. But as we consume the foods that are rich in carbohydrates and sugary foods for the longer periods of time, our cells will get fed up, and it will start resisting for the intake of glucose, and slowly the normal cells will start resisting the glucose, and they will become kind of insulin resistance. So let's see how that will look like. So in the insulin resistant cells, so even though the insulin from the bloodstream is paired up with the insulin receptors, the glucose channel will be only partially open. So because of which only some amount of glucose will be entered into the cell, and because of which only some amount of energy will get created. And even in some cases, even though the insulin from the bloodstream is paired up with the insulin receptors, the glucose channel will not be opened at all. So because of which no glucose will be entered into cell, and because of which no energy will be created. Now as the cells are resisting insulin and the glucose channel is not opened, the glucose will not enter into the cell. So the glucose will keep remained in the bloodstream, and pancreas will release more and more insulin as there is glucose in the bloodstream. Now what this insulin will do, as the cells are resisting glucose, it will store this glucose on livers and muscles as glycogen, and it will also store all the excess glucose in the form of the fat. So here, as the cells are not uptaking glucose, the energy will not be created efficiently, and instead the glucose is stored on other ways. So because of this we fall into this cycle, like we eat food, pancreas will release insulin, and cells will resist the insulin, and because of which the energy is not created from the cells efficiently, and instead the insulin will convert all the glucose into fat, and because of which we gain weight, and we feel kind of tired, and we feel hungry after some time, and again we feel like eating, and we start eating again, and this cycle will keeps on repeating. Without efficient generation of energy, the glucose will be stored as fat. So this is the insulin resistance cycle, and this is the overall picture. So it's always important to have the balanced meal to not fall into this insulin resistance cycle.